Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program where... Hi Minmus. I just loaded up the save, I didn't turn the camera at all, and there's Minmus just chilling right there. Okay. Kind of rare to even see Minmus. Well, I mean, we see it all the time, but it's kind of rare to notice Minmus at this distance. Of course, we're currently in our mission to the moon, out over here, with our Apollo 8 craft and our slightly awkward engine here. It's fine. We need to get into position here for our orbital injection burn. So we're going to do exactly that. We have about 1 day until we arrive at the moon, so it's not like we have any sort of a rush. And this is basically just a pure retrograde, so I'm going to lock us to retrograde here. We're not going to warp all the way over here, though. I want to get into about here. So very high over the moon, we're going to load into the sphere of influence, and we're going to need to get our science done. Now, our science is actually going to be a little bit awkward here, because I realized we only have one hatch, and this capsule only seats one for the moment. This will be upgraded when we have more tech, and we're hoping that we'll have more tech after this flight. That would be ideal. We'll see if that ends up happening, and either way, we're probably going to make some modifications here. But let's grab our crew report, let's grab our temperature scan, our atmospheric pressure scan, our mystery goo observation, and actually we don't want to be in retrograde right now, and let's grab our materials study as well. Cool. So with all of our science grabbed, let's get into position here. Actually, I want to check to see... I recall having a trim issue when that I noticed after the episode. Yeah, see, we're trimmed over a little bit. So I'm going to Alt-A here and get rid of that trim. Okay. That should do the trick. So in theory, we shouldn't go tumbling wildly. In theory. But Jeb is going to have to hop outside here so that Bob can hop out, which is going to make things, of course, mildly awkward for him. So Jeb needs to EVA, and he's just going to hang out here for the moment. And I think that we do maybe still have a small amount of trim going on here. Okay, we can't actually adjust our trim without a pilot, it looks like. So that's fine. We're going to have Jeb EVA on in. Yeah, we definitely do have some trim going on here. So I'm going to change this over a little bit to be about there and about... Okay. That should be approximately correct. Approximately. So Jeb's going to hop out here, and hopefully the trim doesn't cause us any major issues. So he's just going to be free floating here, and we're going to park approximately here. We'll have to check to make sure that he's not having any issues and floating off. But for now, that'll be fine. We're going to transfer Bob on over to our capsule, and then Bob, of course, is going to EVA. And he's going to grab an EVA report. We're going to hop back in, and we're going to collect all of our data. There we go. We're going to hop back out now, and we're going to head on over here. Fantastic. And we're going to grab what data we can. So we're going to restore the Science Junior, and we're kind of on the wrong side here for the mystery goo, but we'll restore that. And we're going to conduct our material study, and we're going to observe our mystery goo. We'll grab both of those, collect that data and restore, and collect data and restore. Now we only have 3 storage locations for this data, and we're going to have to think about how we want to store and retrieve the data from our actual landing module. That's going to be interesting. We'll see how we want to do that. We're going to collect this data and restore. Wait a sec. We already did this. Okay. So I want to conduct this material study. We're just going to have to dump one of those there. Okay. Now we're going to hop in, or rather we're going to have Bob hop in. So in you go, Bob. Yeah, we're going to have to dump one. That's my own fault. So we're going to transfer Bob on over. And then now we're going to get Jeb back in, now that Jeb had his nice little spacewalk. Okay, Jeb went in a little fast. It's fine. It's completely fine. You got this, Jeb. Okay, now we have to match rotation with this thing. But it's all good. Okay, so SAS on, and we're going to head on over to the maneuver marker. And then we're going to get this flight finished up. We've got all the science that we're going to get, and we're going to get a decent amount of science out of this. The question is exactly how much are we going to get out of this? I don't know. That's going to be interesting. But we're just going to circularize our orbit here, and then we're going to head home. In reality, they made 10 orbits, but that feels like a lot. So we're probably not going to do that. There's not really a reason for us to make 10 orbits. So I'll just note that they did. And let's enter into a proper orbit here in 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. Okay, so from here we're going to use our fuel a little inefficiently. And the reason for that is because we're going to assume that at this point, and we kind of overshot this a bit, but that's okay. We're going to assume that at this point, we've used up all of this fuel in a future mission because we brought the LAM along with us. Maybe we had some inclination changes to hit a particular orbit. We lowered our orbit down for the LAM, you know, things like that. So we're going to assume that, and we're just going to jettison this fuel. We're testing our return trip utilizing just the fuel that is in the crew module. So that's absolutely fine. We're not going to have a problem with this, of course. And sometime around here or so is when we're going to want to start up a burn. We're going to want this to be a prograde burn in order to get ourselves our return trajectory here. We're going to play it kind of safe. This is an untested capsule, and we're going to bring this in at around 30 kilometers for the periapsis. That might be a little too much. We'll see. But this is a safe return here. So that'll do. Okay. So we're going to, of course, orbit on around here. We'll do basically a full orbit. And then we'll return on home. We don't get any additional data from in-space high. We need to go to in-space low for that. And of course, we're reserving in-space low data at this point for Apollo 10. Apollo 9, we're not really going to get much data out of, but we will need the LAM module. And hopefully the upgrade to our proper to our proper Saturn V. That would be good. Saturn V Block 2 is, I think, what we're calling it. Or Saturn 4.99. The more awkward name. I like it. Okay, so, of course, naturally, in order to go there, we're burning this way, you know, as you do. We're going to be doing this in about 6 seconds. And we're going to be missing out on a little bit of science here, but it's not a big deal. We don't have anywhere to store it. We would if we could, but we have nowhere else to store it. The real question is, this is a pretty heavy module that we're returning. Now, this is going to be redesigned to some degree. No doubt about that. But we're just going to bring this right on home. Now, we could do a radial retrograde re-entry burn here, and that would really be the optimal way to do this. But we're running a test of our crew module. So instead, we're just going to jettison this here as soon as... There we go. That should do. What are we at? Yep, that'll do. We're going to jettison this, and we're just going to head on in like so. Phenomenal. So we're just going to see how this goes. It's going to be interesting. Really, we should be warping to somewhere around here. Okay. Hi, Minmus. Again. Cool. So we're loading into the sphere of influence of Kerbin, and here we are. Now we're going to start slowly falling towards Kerbin, but we're going to get quite a lot of speed built up. And this is the real stress test of this at this point. This module is kind of big and heavy. Aerobraking is only going to slow us so much, which is part of the reason why I wanted to target a higher periapsis. Although this is 26 kilometers. I thought it was 29, but whatever. That's probably close enough. I didn't want to target the 10-kilometer number that we've been targeting with our low Earth orbit flights, or low Kerbin orbit flights, I should say. I didn't want to target that number because I felt like that just wasn't going to go well. Not with the amount of speed that we're going to have coming back here and the weight of this capsule. So, we're going to continue to head on in here. We're traveling well above orbital speeds at this moment. And I don't know if we're actually going to slow down enough with this braking pass. Surely we will at 26 kilometers. Especially with this heat shield. Surely we will. Okay, let's warp on forward here. Actually, let's not warp for the moment. We're already seeing these heating effects. We're going at like 3,200 meters per second. This is almost a full kilometer per second above orbital velocity. Okay, we're seeing some heating gauges here. I'm not shocked about it with the thruster blocks. One thing we might want to consider doing is this. Actually, this. The Science Junior blew up. Okay, that's very awkward. Very, very, very awkward. Losing that Science Junior is a big problem. I don't know if we're going to survive this re-entry. We're going pretty quick here. We are slowing down dramatically, though. I actually think we are okay here. Although we did lose some of our science. It would have been the least valuable bits of the science. So we definitely need to do some rejiggering on this, right? No doubt about that. RCS can be off at this point. We don't have any RCS, and we can turn this off as well. So we're definitely cruising pretty quick here, and we're slowing down nicely. I think we are indeed safe, but this is not what I would consider a nominal re-entry. This will definitely require some rework. No doubt about that. But we are safe here. To be clear, this is not the module that we want to have. But it is fine. It does do the job, although I wouldn't want to try that one again. That was really close to not being good. That was really close to being incredibly bad, actually. The crew hatch here, or rather the crew cabin here, very nearly burned off there. So the Science Junior was what blew up first there, which was interesting. But we can bring this back just fine. We don't actually lose anything tremendously valuable. We lose our least valuable bits of science and no crew members. So if something had to burn off, I guess that's what we would want. But this clearly requires additional work. I'm not shocked about this. And we're going to be changing that, for sure. No doubt about that one. The other thing that I have significant questions on is, let's see here, Apollo 13, where they returned to Earth with the lunar module as a lifeboat. I'll have to look up how they actually did that, because I can't imagine that the lunar module is intended for re-entry. Maybe they just returned to Earth orbit and were rescued by another craft or something. I'll have to look into exactly how that happened. I don't know that for right now, but I don't have a good picture on that. But we get most of our science back, most of our important science there, and we got all of this done. So hopefully, well, we're going at 4 meters per second. Surely they'll survive this, but I do not want to be time warping when we hit the ground here. Okay. Cool. So that looks good. I guess we could grab a surface sample from the grasslands here, just to get that extra little bit of science to make up for the small amount that we lost. So we'll recover this, and at this point, that is our Apollo 8 completed. So I'll mark that off as done, and we're going to need to get our payment for that. And then I'd like to do our Block 2 upgrade of the Saturn V rocket. That would be absolutely amazing to get that done here. We do have a little bit of extra time, so that would be good. The next episode is likely going to be one mission, like not broken up because they don't go to the moon. So that's okay. We got 167 science out of that. Okay. So that puts us at 184 science. Now we do need to get our payment here. So we need 200,000. There we go. And let's hop into R&D. We wanted to grab, I believe, advanced fueling systems to get access to the FLTX 1800. Well, that's actually the smaller size. What we really want is the Kerbidine size here, like the large volume containment, right? Is there some Kerbidine in here? I mean, there's some adapters in here. There's a Jumbo 64. We may have to make a janky upgrade for right now and do a Block 3. Let's hop into the VAB and we'll see what we can do. So I'd like to make some significant changes to this rocket now that we've got some science. So we're going to open up our Apollo 8 craft, which is this guy. Now, this is allegedly the Saturn V. This is going to need to be quad compact, and I want that to be like a... The gray shroud is the only option for the quad compact. No, there's a white shroud option. Okay, so we'll do something like that. This up here does need to be moved around a bit. So, first things first. I'm going to ditch the crew cabin. I'm going to ditch these parachutes for the moment, and we're going to take all of this off. And we're going to put on, for the moment, and this might get a little bit wonky here, but we're going to put on the Mark 1-3 command pod. This is just better, significantly. Now I'm going to detach here. We're going to remove this heat shield. And these components are, I guess, going to be stored on top now. Oh, we'll have to do it like this. Okay. So these components are going to be stored on top now, like this. Then we've got this decoupler here. We're going to need a heat shield. So we would end up putting in a 2.5 meter heat shield here. Now this is, of course, a little wild. No doubt about that. So we're going to have this be a little bit odd. What I want to do for right now is I want to go into here, and we would put the larger launch escape system on here. Then we would end up... The experiment storage unit, we can get an internal or a radial experiment storage unit, right? Well, we can simply store it inside of the service bay. Or have a second service bay that would go down here. That's actually an interesting option. So we could move the service bay into this. And then this, all of the components inside of here would be moved inside of here. So we would do something kind of like this. We would put in dual computer flight units to have a backup. Like that. And then we grab our science components, and I would put one of these in here. Now, a lot of these are going to be in the LAM in some capacity. So the thermometer is going to go in here. Is that everything? I think that's everything. So then we would remove this service bay, and we would put the Science Junior on like this. Then the heat shield would go here, like that, and we would be recovering functionally this. We would end up putting probably several experiment storage units in here. So I would end up removing this. We would put in one here, one here, and maybe even a third one. Something kind of like... I want it to rotate differently. Yeah, rotating like that. Something kind of like this would be what we would end up doing. So the experiment storage units would be like that. Those are likely going to remain. We'll have to move some things around with regard to the LAM. So from here, we would attach this guy. We would need radial mount parachutes, and we would put in two of those like... I think we would put those in here. That's kind of blocking the windows. Maybe we would put them here. The drogue chutes, we would definitely attach onto here as well. Do we require additional parachutes for this? I'm actually going to put on 2 additional drogue chutes just to be safe. Something like that. It looks kind of funky, but something along those lines. So then we would ditch this. And then this, of course, is going to be a little wonky, right? So we would need this to then have a TD-25 decoupler. And our launch escape system is going to end up being a little different too. We're going to need the LAM module on here. That's going to be a little complicated. We'll come back to that in a moment. So for now, we would simply put on something like an X208. And then we would just put... What would we put on here? Actually, we should put a fuel adapter here. So we would end up putting something kind of like this on here then. And then this would end up being like a Terrier. That's 352 meters per second. What is it in space? Okay, that's 1428. That's more than enough. So that would be fine. And then we would put this on here, but we would not require this Terrier, right? So we would ditch this and put this on. And then we would strut these together up here, although I'd want that to be like quad coupled. So it'd end up being kind of like this. And then we've still got this awkward poodle here. However, I'm thinking about maybe ditching this poodle. This is not strictly accurate, but we ditch this poodle and we just do something like that. So it's a 2-stage instead of a 3-stage. Like I said, it's not going to be perfectly accurate. We're just having it be inspired by. If we had a wider frame here, then I would certainly think about doing this significantly differently. As it is, this bows out too much up here, right? But we don't have access to the larger fuel tanks at this time, so that's okay. As we can see, these are not larger, which was expected. So that's okay. We're definitely fine with this. I do want to address this stage. So we're going to detach this and the external fuel ducts. We don't actually need these radial decouplers, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these slightly higher up to about here. We're going to take the mainsails off, and we're going to run the fuel ducts from the outside in, or rather the inside out. And we're now going to have additional fuel down here. And I'm also going to clip these in a little bit further than they are currently. About like that. There we go. And this is going to help emulate having the wider frame down here. So that would be the idea here. We're going to have, I think these are the FL size. Yes, that is correct. Okay, so we would end up putting in something like, not that one. I think we would need this one. And then this one to get to about the same height. Then we put in our mainsails. Like that. Okay. I don't like the orange shroud on this, but I don't think we really have that much of an option for the 1.875 meter. I guess it's white shroud, but that doesn't change the coloration here. So this does give us that striped effect that we were talking about down here, which is kind of nice. It's not perfect. There's no doubt about that. Then the question is, how are we going to do the LAM? Well, that is quite a question. No doubt about that. This is going to be a fair amount of additional fuel here, and it's more efficient in this stage up here as well. So that's reasonably fine. I do actually want to, I think, bump this into being a Rockamax Jumbo 64 now. And it would be something kind of like this. Okay, what's our thrust to weight? 1.2. So we're going to have to bump this up, obviously, from 35 and 45. Let's take it to 50, and then this also goes to 50. So something like that, 1.39. Okay, let's take it up to 60. Across the board. So 60 and 60. That'll do. Cool. So that should be a decent amount more power in this first stage. We have consolidated together this interstage here, and this is a much better capsule. This doesn't deal with the LAM. So we're going to need to build the lunar module. No doubt about that. So we would use like the lunar excursion module here, and that would end up being docked here. So we would have a Clampotron docking port junior here that's just kind of awkwardly hanging out. And then we would attach another one in like that. And it would be docked like so. Now this has some fuel and monoprop. And it has some thrust as well. Okay. So we would need some lander equipment here. I'm going to toss in a service bay for right now, although I kind of want to flip this guy around. Let's save this. Let's ditch this for the moment. And let's actually ditch everything here. And we're going to base this around the lunar excursion module. Okay, so we've got this. We know that we need a docking port up here. So we need a Clampotron docking port junior. Not like that. Like so. Cool. I'm going to save this as the LM. Okay, so we've got this guy, right? And this contains 2 people, which is correct. And we would need some sort of landing legs on it. That would be good. So, yeah, this is only for the ascent module, I think. So what we would end up doing is we would end up having some sort of a small fuel tank on this, right? So it would end up being something kind of like a T200 or so. Okay, that really wants to go out to FL size. So noted, we would end up going with something kind of like this. And then we would have, we'll need science experiments on it and landing struts. But I want to test something like this first. So we'd do that, and then we'd have our landing engine, which in this case would be a Terrier. And we could make that be like a boat tail or something, but it doesn't really matter. I think this is probably fine. So something along the lines of this would be what we would land with. We do, however, require some science on here. So I'm just going to save this and put this out on the pad real quick here. And we're going to move this simulated. We're going to be reverting this. We're going to move this simulated over the moon, and we're going to do a couple of maneuvers here to just test some theories and see what kind of margin we have. What we really need on here as well is going to be our science modules, right? So we'll see what we can do about that. That's going to be interesting. We might end up putting those up here. Yeah, we'll see. For now, I want to place this over the moon. So I want to go to the moon. And then we would set our orbit. It doesn't really matter what orbit, but I want to go to like the lowest safe orbit, actually. So we're just going to set this to 10. It'll bump it to the lowest safe. And there we go. So here we are, and we can see we have a lot of delta V in this thing. Does this not actually have an engine? Okay, noted. Okay, so let's just hop over here. So it does have RCS. How much monoprop does it have? Okay, so we've already identified a couple of problems here, but for the time being, we've got lots of thrust to weight here. That looks good. Yeah, this is using just gimbaling here. So that's not a concern, right? We can already revert this back. We know what our problems here are at this point. We lack a reaction wheel. So I'm going to toss a small reaction wheel up over here. There we go. I would also like to toss a Science Junior on here somewhere. That's going to be interesting. So a Science Junior would go like here, awkwardly. I think we're better off with a Radial Science Junior. So we do our science radially. We would do a Radial Science Junior over here. Then we would put in a Mystery Goo Containment Unit over here. And I would also probably include an Experiment Storage Unit over here. Like that. And then we would put on our 2-hot thermometer here. And we would put on our Crossmat barometer here. Like that. Now, this does not have an engine in it, so we would want to have a decoupler here. And this does contain liquid fuel and monoprop. So we would want to put on like a small engine, maybe a pug. That's really awkward. That's really, really awkward. Okay, so it would end up being something kind of like this, because we're going to want to leave this behind, right? So we would end up putting a like TD12 decoupler here. Yeah, I don't like the boat tail. If only we could change this skirt, right? That would be ideal. I think we're better off here, and let me undo that. I think we're better off here to ditch this, put this on exactly as it was, and then put a couple of thrusters on here if we have like little radial thrusters, like thuds. They're not exactly little, but we have them. So we would end up putting on, oh, these are very not little, a pair of thuds. That's exceptionally not little. And I think that we would then want to have our experiment storage unit up here. And it would end up being something kind of like this. So we would only be able to store 2 radial of the Science Junior and Mystery Goo containment units. We would store 1 in the module itself, and we'd store 1 in the experiment storage unit. Then we would open up our Apollo 8, which is our rebuilt Saturn V. This is very awkward here. I don't love it, but it kind of is what it is. And then we would attach in, so yeah, save and continue, that's fine. We would attach in our LM, which I want the newest version of the LM here. We would merge that, and then we would flip it around so that it's attached in up here. Although it doesn't seem to have an attachment point. Okay. Minor problem there. So we would need to load in the LM, and we would reroute. This becomes the root part. Save that, and then we would open up the Apollo 8. There we go. And we would merge in the LM. Flip it around. Attach it like that. We would retract these landing legs, and we want this to have some sort of a fairing, right? We would definitely want this to have a fairing. So I would put in a fairing around here. A 1.25 fairing should be absolutely fine. Although I would like it to be maybe a little bit bigger. Maybe we would actually put the fairing here and have it be a... we only have access to a 1.875 meter fairing. But I guess that could work. So it would end up being something kind of like... even that's going to be a little bit bowed out here. Okay. Yeah, a little bit awkward here on the fairing. Oh, that does not look great. Okay. So, in that case, if only we had a 2.5 meter fairing. Sadly, we don't. So we're going to have to do a Block 3 upgrade on this. And, of course, there's these studs here, which this is all going to be all sorts of messed up. But it is past time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we're going to make probably a few additional alterations to this rocket. It's not perfect by any means. We're going to make probably a few alterations to it, and then we're going to put this into its first low Earth orbit test flight. And we'll test some of this stuff and see how this actually goes. That is the Apollo 9 mission after all. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Shadow Wolf, Andy Bagar, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12 UK, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.